لله وكفى والسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى أما بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والذين جاهدوا فينا لنهدينهم سبلنا سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. We live in a world that places a very high premium on strong families, positive parenting, raising our kids in a virtuous way. You see that everyone, whether they're Muslims or non-Muslim, practicing or not practicing, wanting to become a good parent is something which is sought after, something which is appreciated and admired. There are different books, seminars, workshops, courses where people pay money in order to learn strategies, tips, techniques, how to raise our kids in a better way. And people are interested in this topic. They show an appreciation for this topic, something which is admired in our society. So human beings, they have a natural desire to become good parents, to raise good families, and they place a premium on this. I think we all want to become good parents, and I don't think anyone wants to be a bad parent. This is a global phenomena. People can learn from each other, they can learn from each other's experiences. However, for a Muslim, this quality reaches its pinnacle. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded us that we should raise our kids in a good way. We should become good parents. We should raise our family in an excellent way. So if there was already a natural desire within us as part of our human identity that we want to raise good families and good kids, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings that to full splendor and perfection by commanding us in the Quran that we're supposed to raise our families in an excellent way. That's why in Quran Allah says that Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu ku anfusakum wa ahlikum nara. That all those people who have Iman, who have professed Iman with their tongue, Allah says it's your responsibility that first and foremost you protect yourself, and then you protect your children, you protect your families from the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in this verse of Quran, this verse entails a responsibility. Allah has placed responsibility upon us that we are supposed to save our kids, our families, and we are supposed to raise them up in such a way that they live a life which is pleasing in the sight of Allah, a life of purity, a life of piety, a life of virtuosity, right? So it's a responsibility that we raise them up. And interestingly, in this verse of the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala links this with our very Iman. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. So it's not some hi-fi Muslim, very basic level Iman. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that for us to be true in our Iman, for us to be sincere and complete and perfect in our Iman, just like we need to pray, we need to fast, we need to give zakah, in a similar way, we also need to raise our kids in a particular way that they grow up to become virtuous. We need to raise families in such a way, in an excellent way. This is a command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So raising our kids and having families which are pleasing in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is our responsibility. Now, we need to understand the nature of this responsibility, and there are three aspects that Allah mentions in the Quran about this. The first aspect is that this responsibility of raising our kids and raising our families in an excellent way, having excellent families, this is a trust. It's an amanat. And we will be questioned about this in the hereafter. In a hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said that every one of you is a guardian. And they're responsible for whoever is under them or with them. The father will be held responsible for his house, and the wife, she will be held responsible for the children of the house. All of you are guardians, all of you are responsible, means that we will be questioned about this. It's a question of accountability that we will be asked about this in the hereafter. The second aspect of this responsibility that we see in the Quran and also in several ahadith of the Prophet ﷺ is that not only our kids, they are a trust and an amanat, they're also an opportunity. They're also an opportunity, little children, little kids, they're an opportunity for this continual charity called Sadaqah Jariyah. In a hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said that when a person they die, their actions discontinue except for a few things. One of them is leaving behind a virtuous child. Whatever they do, whatever good they do, it will be added to our account, and it's like a big chain that can pull us up and give us a rank which otherwise we may not be able to attain. It's an opportunity for us that we can raise our kids in such a way that maybe things that we weren't able to achieve in our life, they would be able to achieve it. They might be able to have a youth, a sin-free youth. They might be able to become hafiz or a scholar or learn multiple languages. Things that we weren't able to do, but we can raise them up in a particular way that they are able to fulfill those dreams. And the third aspect that we learn in the Quran is that our kids, they are not just an opportunity to come close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they're also a trial and a temptation and a test from Allah. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will sometimes use them, and through them we will be tested. We will be tried, and we will be tested in the sense that our children, our families can become a source of distraction from Allah. One can become overly preoccupied about their kids, such that in Quran Allah mentions this word fitna, that they can make you heedless of Allah. Your kids can make you heedless about Allah, about the meeting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in akhirah, and about the etiquettes and the manners of spending this journey called the world, dunya. They can make a person even commit sins. To support them financially, a person ends up taking or consuming unlawful means, indulging in impermissible activities. Our love for them can make us weak and can make us stingy. It can make us weak in the sense that we may might find difficult to do things that Allah wants us to do. Someone wants to leave for Hajj, but then they think about their kids and they leave that idea. Someone wants to spend in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but they become stingy at that time when they actually want to spend. So these are the three aspects that we find in the Quran about responsibility. Now, there are multiple dimensions to these responsibilities. The first and foremost is simply recognizing them. That Allah has placed responsibility upon me, that we are supposed to raise our children, our families in such a way that they make themselves pleasing in the sight of Allah. And we should have this intention to raise our kids Islamically. That is entry-level Islam, right? That is, many times we don't even realize that this responsibility is on our shoulder. That's the first step, first dimension. But then there's also a second and a deeper dimension, which is that we should be happy and thankful that this responsibility has been placed on our shoulder. Right? To be thankful, to view this to be not as a burden or as a weight that, these kids will throw a tantrum and then they know which button to press and they can drive us crazy, right? But rather to view them as an honor. That this is an honor from Allah, this is an opportunity for Sadaqah Jariyah. If I can raise them up in a particular way, then these are gifts from Allah. Our attitude should be that, oh Allah, you have given me these beautiful gifts. These are opportunities for me to draw close to you, and these are opportunities that maybe I wasn't able to attain things, but they will be able to attain those things. So we should take this opportunity as a pleasure. We should smile, we should be grateful, we should be happy to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, regardless of how difficult this job is, right? We complain about, and this responsibility applies to so many aspects of our life. It's not just our kids. No, it applies to our parents, it applies to our spouse, It applies to our kids. It applies to neighbors, our employers, our employees. These are all opportunities. We complain about them, but the reality is that these are opportunities. And if we have this attitude that, oh Allah, said you have given me these opportunities in life, but whereby I can draw close to you, and instead of, regardless of how difficult they are, because that's the nature of responsibility. The responsibility is difficult, right? But still, oh Allah, I'm thankful to you. I'm grateful to you, right? That you gave me a spouse, for example. That when I was unmarried, you gave me this blessing of a spouse, and now through that spouse, I have this opportunity. I can fulfill my responsibilities towards my partner, and thereby I can draw close to you. It's sunnah. It's not about whose rights we want to fulfill, your rights, my rights. We should look at relationships as an opportunity whereby we can draw ourselves close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Same thing with kids. Same thing with our parents. Not that if they're making a request and they keep making a request over and over again, so instead of becoming agitated and irritated, we should view that as an honor, as we should take it with pleasure. That Allah, you have given me these relationships in my life, and these are opportunities whereby I can draw myself close to you. Allah, I'm so thankful to you, so grateful to you, so honored that you have given me this opportunity. I view this we take it with a smile on our face. And I just want to, before I move ahead, I want to narrate one hadith about what happens if we accept these responsibilities with joy, with pleasure. It's a very weighty hadith, a very beautiful hadith mentioned in the book of Sahih al-Bukhari. And in that hadith, the Prophet ﷺ mentioned to one companion, a Sahabi, that when we hear the call of prayer, the azan, after hearing that call of prayer, we should recite something. We should recite, the Prophet ﷺ said that you should recite, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallahu wahdahu la sharika lah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. We testify to the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we testify to our belief that the Prophet ﷺ is the messenger of Allah. And then after that, the Prophet ﷺ said that you should also recite this particular phrase, that Razitu billahi rabba wa bi Muhammadin nabiyya wa bil islami deena. And whoever recites these two things, the Prophet ﷺ said that their sins are forgiven. Their sins are forgiven. Now, what does this phrase mean? And what is happening in this hadith? What is the Prophet ﷺ teaching us in this? When the call to prayer is given, when the azan is given, then after that the Prophet ﷺ is saying that a person should first, the response. What is the response? The response should be first that we testify to the Tawheed, the oneness of Allah, and that the Prophet ﷺ is the messenger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But then after that, a person, they should be pleased and they should be happy. Yani the response is that, oh Allah, I'm so pleased that you are my Lord. And the azan, the call to prayer was given, and now finally I have this opportunity that I can come to the masjid and I can pray my salah and I can offer my thanks and gratitude to you. I'm so thankful to you that you have blessed me with this opportunity, this chance, and I view this to be, I view this as a pleasure, as an honor that you have bestowed upon me. And I am also extremely thankful and grateful to you that you blessed me with the Prophet ﷺ, because through the Prophet ﷺ, I got that sense and that recognition. That sense and that recognition that you are my Lord, and now that the call for prayer was given, so I can now come to the masjid and I can pray, I can submit myself before you. That sense to worship you was given to me through my Prophet ﷺ. I'm so thankful to you, so grateful to you that you have given me the Prophet ﷺ as my Nabi. Allah, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And then I'm so thankful and grateful to you that you've given me Islam as my religion. No matter how difficult the things are in Islam, but this is an opportunity for me to draw close to you. I'm thanking you. Allah, thank you so much. I'm so pleased. I'm so happy for this. And whoever has this opportunity, whoever has this attitude to this responsibility of praying salah, the Prophet ﷺ is saying that all their sins are forgiven. Right? Just think for a moment, this person, he just heard or she just heard the call to prayer. This person hasn't even prayed salah yet. He hasn't fulfilled the mandate of prayer yet. The obligation is still on his shoulder. They haven't even prayed yet. They just simply responded to the azan in a beautiful way, in a way that they show their excitement, they show their pleasure, and Allah is forgiving all their sins. Just imagine what will happen when this person comes and actually starts praying. Right? Just for a moment, think about the power, the magnitude of accepting these responsibilities with pleasure, with joy, with happiness. This is just one small example. Right? Just imagine for a moment the reward that a person will get when they are excited about the salah. Allah, I'm so excited that the salah is coming and I will be praying my salah. I'm so excited that the month of Ramadan is about to start. So excited that you've given me the opportunity to perform Hajj. I'm so excited that you blessed me with a spouse. And now I have an opportunity to fulfill my responsibility towards them. I'm so excited that you blessed me with the children when there are so many other people who don't have kids. You gave me this opportunity and I can use that to come close to you. I'm so excited. Allah, thank you so much. I'm so excited, so thankful, so grateful to you that you gave me parents. You gave me parents and they still make requests to me. And I have this opportunity that I can fulfill those requests that they're making to me. I'm so thankful, so grateful to you. Imagine if a person, these are responsibilities which are difficult, which are trials and tests, but the attitude that Allah wants from us is that we view them to be our pleasure, our honor, and we are thankful and grateful to Allah for that. The vast majority of Muslims, we are at level 1. We recognize what we're supposed to do. We recognize our responsibilities. That we're supposed to be good mother, good father, good parents, we recognize them. So but we don't go beyond that. And beyond that is where the depth of Islam lies. Right? Beyond that is where the excellence lies, where ihsan lies. Not just simply knowing what we're supposed to do and recognizing them, rather we view that to be as our pleasure, as our honor. We are thankful and grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for these responsibilities. We accept these responsibilities with happiness, with joy, with a smile on our face. And this is what exactly Shaitan stops us from doing. Shaitan, this is the deception. Shaitan, he knows that he will never be able to take us away from our prayer, from our fasting, from knowing what our responsibilities are. But Shaitan knows this much, that I will try to make these responsibilities appear as a burden. Right? Let them think that Islam is a burden. Right? Let them complain about their responsibilities. So he puts that deception in our mind that Islam is so difficult. Right? These responsibilities are too strict, too stern, too hard for you, too difficult. And we start complaining. We view it to be like a burden upon our shoulder. That's what Shaitan makes us do. So step 1 is that we recognize these responsibilities, and step 2 is we try to attain depth in our deen by being appreciative of these responsibilities, thanking Allah, being grateful to Allah, viewing this as an opportunity to come close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, what is excellence here? How can we attain that depth and in our relationships? And in particular, I want to speak about family and raising our kids. How can we attain excellence in that? What are some principles, some guidelines, some tips, some strategies? So there's a lot of research that is being done about this. And it's quite interesting that there's a lot of overlap, right? Whatever Islam and Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ tells us, we learn that modern research is often saying the same thing and often confirming, right? It's confirming things that we already know about
things that we already were told by the Prophet ﷺ several years ago, right? So I just want to quickly, in the limited time that we have, go through some principles that we find in the Quran and the Sunnah with regards to how we can raise our kids, our families, prophetic parenting, or if you may, positive parenting in light of Quran and Sunnah. So the first principle that we find is that we should try to befriend our kids. Befriend our kids. At least one, either the father or the mother, they should be the best friend. And all of us know this hadith that a person will be on the deen of their best friend, right? And as our children, they grow older, it will be very difficult for us to impose things upon them, right? But if we can befriend them and have that kind of a relationship with them where they don't feel scared, or where they don't have that hesitation in opening up to us, in approaching us, and in sharing anything that they want to, that's a healthy relationship. We find this in the Quran. Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, he had a dream, and he did not feel any hesitation in sharing that dream, right, with his father, right? He shared that dream, and how can we befriend the child? There are several ways. First and foremost is that you need to play with them, right? You need to play with them. And how many parents they play with their kids? How many of them give rides on their back? The Prophet ﷺ would do that. The Prophet ﷺ would give a ride to his kids, to the grandkids on his back, right? How many of them play sports with their kids? This is a well-documented research that if we as parents, if we are not friends with our kids in that age, then they will not become our friends when they become teenagers, nor will they become friends in our old age. It's that age, 0 to 7 to 10, 11, 12, that's the age where we need to play with them. And this is exactly what the Prophet ﷺ used to do. The Prophet ﷺ used to play with the kids. He would stand at one place, and he would tell the children to line up, and he would say, "Run towards me." And the children, and whoever reaches me first, I will give him some prize. And then the children would run, they would race towards the Prophet ﷺ, and they would be panting, and they would, just collapse on the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ would then hug them, and he would also give them prizes, sweets or dates as a way to reward them. Hazrat Khalid radiyallahu ta'ala anha, she was a small girl. She narrates that once I was wearing this yellow dress, and I went with my father to meet the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet ﷺ looked at me and praised me, complimented me, and said, "Sana, sana." Sana is an Ethiopian word which means good, 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 and complimented me on the dress that I was wearing. And I then started playing at the back of the Prophet ﷺ with the seal of prophethood, playing with the Prophet ﷺ. And my father was there. He rebuked me. He said that, "What are you doing?" He said that the Prophet ﷺ. And the Prophet ﷺ said to the father that, leave it, let her play. And I continued playing, and then the Prophet ﷺ made dua for me that the clothes that you're wearing, may you wear them for so long that they're worn out. And gave me that dua 3 times. Such a beautiful narration or report where we are learning that the Prophet ﷺ would compliment the clothes of the kids. He would allow them to play, and he rebuked the father that, "Don't say this, let her play. You need to play with our kids." Once Hazrat Umama radiyallahu ta'ala anha, she was with the Prophet ﷺ in the masjid, and the Prophet ﷺ, whenever he would do ruku or sajda, he would hold her in her arms, and then in sajda he would put her down on the ground, and when he would rise back up in qiyam, he would pick her up in his arms during salah, right? Showing that love to our kids. And this is very important. Sometimes we say as parents that we love our kids, we have that feeling of love, but we don't express that love. And what we are learning in the prophetic and the sunnah model is it's not just enough that you feel love, You need to express that love to your kids, to your family as well. Expressing, finding ways to express our love. The Prophet ﷺ said that I pray my salah, and sometimes I rise up to pray and I want to extend my salah. I want to prolong my salah, and then during salah I hear the cry of a child, and which makes me shorten the prayer because I dislike making it hard for the kid and making it hard for the mother of the kid. This is salah, in salah. What is salah? Salah is one you're communicating with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Salah is what the Prophet ﷺ said, the coolness of my eyes. Such an incredible, exalted act of ibadah. In salah, look at the affection, the compassion, the concern that the Prophet ﷺ has for kids. Expressing love, right? Expressing love. Once the Prophet ﷺ was in sajda, and one of his grandson was on his back, and the Prophet ﷺ prolonged that sajda. And the Sahaba, they later narrated, they said that, "Oh Messenger of Allah, we thought that something has happened to you. The sajda was so long. What happened?" And the Prophet ﷺ said that one of my kids was on my back and I did not want to inconvenience him. Subhanallah. Right? This is salah, in salah. So we should play with our kids. The Prophet, the etiquette is that the young should say salam to those who are old. But the Prophet ﷺ, when he would walk by children on the streets of Medina Munawwara, he would be the first to say salam to them. He would initiate salam. Right? He would kiss them, he would hug them, he would greet them. The Prophet ﷺ's love for his daughter, Sayyidina Fatima to Zahra radiyallahu ta'ala anha, it's unparalleled. There's so many stories about that. He would say salam. Whenever she would come, the Prophet ﷺ would rise up. He would say salam to her, he would greet her, he would hug her, and he would make her sit in his place. Once the Prophet ﷺ was giving a ride on his shoulder to one of his grandsons. So one of the companions, they remarked that what a beautiful ride. Right? What a beautiful ride. The Prophet ﷺ replied and said that the rider is also so beautiful. Right? Again, displaying that affection, right? Expressing that love. So there are several ways we can do this, right? We should call our kids with a beautiful name. In Surah Luqman, we learn Ya Bunayya. Right? That, oh my beautiful, my beloved child. We should welcome our children when they come back home, smile them, greet them. And what's very important, even scientific research is confirming this, physical touch. The importance of physical touch. Whether it's kissing, whether it's hugging, whether it's simply just cuddling them, our skin is the largest sensory organ that we have. It's literally our contact with the outer world. Touch is the first language that we learn. It's the first sense that we acquire and the last sense that we lose. And in the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ mentioned about a handshake. Simple handshake. The Prophet ﷺ said that, you should shake each other's hand, for this can remove the malice from your heart. Shaking hands will remove the malice from your heart. Qazi Ayaz rahmatullah alayh, he narrates gives us some details about the handshake of the Prophet ﷺ. And he says that whenever the Prophet ﷺ would shake hands, the Prophet ﷺ would not let go until the other person would let go first. And the Prophet ﷺ would always be the first to shake hands and would not let go till the other person would let go. Hadrat Jabir radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, he narrates that I prayed Fajr Salah with the Prophet ﷺ in the masjid, and then the Prophet ﷺ, he left the masjid and I accompanied him. And he was met by a group of children, and the Prophet ﷺ would rub their cheeks one by one, right? Rubbing their cheeks one by one. And then he rubbed my cheek, and I felt that the hand of the Prophet ﷺ was cool and fragrant, as if he had just taken it out from a bag of fragrance. Touching, right? A rubbing the cheek, right? touch. This is extremely important. And in a recent study at the Harvard University, one of the conclusions of that study was they said that kids whose fathers hugged and cuddled them while they were young, these kids, they were significantly less likely to have problems such as aggression and violence than those fathers who would not hug or cuddle their kids. Hugs, it creates smarter kids. It keeps your kids healthy. Happy hugs make happy kids, right? And along with physical touch, words of affirmation, words to encourage them. Because it's child psyche that whatever children are told, they start believing them. If we keep saying that I love you, I love you, I love you, they will inevitably absorb that and say that my parents, they do love me. So, using words of affirmation to positively reinforce the good things that they're doing. If you want to have a child to do something, the etiquette is that first praise what the child is already doing and then provide the motivation or the encouragement or tell him what he needs to do. We learn about this in the Sunnah. Hazrat Abdullah bin Umar radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma, he says that I was a young boy, and the Prophet ﷺ once said to me that Abdullah bin Umar, he's such a nice young man. He's such a nice young man, praised him. But if only he would start praying tahajjud, he would become even more pleasing in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. First praise and then the guidance. And Hazrat Abdullah bin Umar radiyallahu ta'ala, he says that after that, I never missed my tahajjud. This is the power of words of affirmation, words of encouragement. And another extremely important way to express our love for our kids, our family, is to give them quality time, right? And I want to address the fathers here in this gathering as well. Giving quality time to our kids is not just the responsibility of mothers. This is also the responsibility of fathers. And the fathers, I'm a father, we should own up to our responsibility. And we learn about this in the Quran. In a beautiful surah, Surah Luqman, there is a conversation which is taking place between a father and his son. And I want us to think about, just think for a moment that these conversations between father and a son, they happen on an everyday basis. There's such, millions of such conversations would have taken place in the past. And yet, this one conversation is so important, right? It's so significant that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has recorded and documented this conversation in the Quran, made that part of his own kalam, his own speech. So there is some wisdom in this conversation, some lesson for us, right? And what we learn in this conversation between Sayyidina Luqman alayhi salam and his son, he's giving some advice, some nasiyah, some counsel, and the first aspect is the way he addresses his son. He calls him Ya Bunayya, again highlighting that we need to call our kids in an affectionate way. Because the way you address them, it should be in such a manner that you show your love towards them. You show respect towards them. You also show your humility and the fact that you want to be friends with them. Right? Affection. And the second thing the second quality that we see in Hazrat Luqman alayhi salam in this episode is that he, this presence, that he is with with his kid, to be present with our children, right? To be present with them during important events of their life, to be there with them, to be there for them, for important milestones, right? And this is a father. And the father being present, being there with their kids for their important events, their important days, important milestones. And that's the lesson we should take and try to sort of inculcate this within our schedule as well. Be there with them for their important events. When children, they go to school, parent-teacher meeting, be there for them. School days, school events, school functions. I was reading a book, and there was a joke there. The father, he said to his son that, "Oh, my son, why did you get such a low score on that exam?" And the son, he said, "Absence." So the father said that, "You were absent on the day of the exam?" The son said, "No, no, no. The boy who was sitting next to me, he was absent." Right? All right. So sometimes, you need to keep an eye on what is happening in their life. So being present with them. And in that conversation, when you're present with them, one aspect of presence is also you take them out for vacations, for regular outings. Direct exposure to nature can again help their intellectual development, can help their curiosity, can reduce the stress and the anxiety that they're facing. We can eat a dinner together. This is also very important in our deen as well. Once some Sahaba, some companions, they came to the Prophet ﷺ and they complained that, "O Messenger of Allah, we eat, but we are not satisfied. And we eat, but we still feel hungry." So the Prophet ﷺ said that perhaps you are eating separately. And they said that, "Yes, we eat separately." So the Prophet ﷺ then gave them advice that eat together. Eat together. And mention the name of Allah before eating. Allah will put barakah in your food, in your sustenance. At least once a day, maybe dinner time, we can get together as a family, and we can then make that electronic free, that family time, and then have some healthy conversations with them as well. Some studies, they suggest that children are very receptive at meal times and at bed times, right? So we can use that as an opportunity for imparting some advice, some wisdom, some counsel, and also we can get barakah in our homes, barakah and blessing in the food, in our sustenance. But one thing, we should try to feed our kids halal and tayyib food. In a hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said that feed your kids pure food, because whatever they eat is what they will do, right? And I can narrate to you a true story, the importance of eating pure food. There was a family here in the US. They wanted their child to become a hafiz of the Quran, and the child was an A+ student at school, coming first every class, excelling in terms of his education at school. But for some reason, when he, at his Hifz school, in his Hifz classes, he was not able to memorize. 1 year passed by, and he was still not able to memorize even the last juz, the 30th juz. So the parents, then they went to some scholar, Islamic scholar, and said that, can you please make dua? Our child is struggling with memorizing the Quran. So the Sheikh, he said that, can I just speak to you and to your child and just understand what is happening in your life and in his life. And after speaking to both the parents and the child, the Sheikh, he recognized that the problem is that the child is eating food which is doubtful, eating things which was not pure, which was not lawful. And then he made a suggestion to the parents and said that if you want my suggestion, then try to give your kids pure halal food and preferably home-cooked food. And if you can do that, then perhaps your child will be able to become a hafiz very quickly. The parents, they took that nasiha and then they implemented this in their life. And within 1 year, the next year, the child became a hafiz of the entire Quran. Right? On one hand, he was struggling for 1 year to memorize the 30th juz, and the next year memorize the entire Quran. So feeding pure food, healthy food, halal and tayyib, this is very important. Again, a responsibility for the parents. And we should also not shy away from spending on our kids, on our family. In a hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said that you spend 1 dirham in order to in the path of Allah. You spend 1 dirham for some charitable cause, and then you spend 1 dirham on your family, on your children, and the best dirham, the most afzal dirham in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that you spend on your family, on your children. Right? So this is a way through which we can earn a reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well. But befriending our kids does not mean that we give them an open freedom. We are too permissive with them. We should be vigilant as well. And we should be watching out for any changes in the behavior of our kids. There is a book by an American child psychologist, Parenting Your Stressed Child. And in that she writes that you should watch out for any anomalies, irregular behavior in your child. So for example, the child was fine, but then suddenly they are not hungry anymore. Or suddenly their sleeping pattern changes. They're sleeping too much or sleeping too less. Or now they're throwing more tantrums, right? So it means that there's something which is happening behind the scenes that's causing these changes in their behavior, and we need to engage our children then. We need to have discussions trying to get the child to tell us what happened. This is very important, right? That one of the parents should sit down with the kid and should counsel them, should engage with them, and through questions, through dialogue, right, without trying to rush them, without trying to force upon them, just let them open up, right? And they will only be able to open up if we have befriended them. If they know that we are lenient with them, right? If they can sense that leniency, if they can sense that friendship, if they can sense that compassion, that affection, that love, then they will open up and they will tell you, right, that my friends did this and that uncle was doing these things. And we may even realize that some of these people might be doing inappropriate things with our kids. Now, we cannot be with our kids all times, all places. So that's why it's very important, and especially in the times that we are living in, there's some crazy stories about what things are happening, right? So we need to be very careful that we have that kind of a relationship with our kids where they can open up and tell us, right, what their friends are doing to them, what the maid is doing to them, other people, helpers and the drivers and the cooks are doing. We need to have that kind of a relationship. And if you're always reprimanding them and always being strict and harsh with them, then they will never find the courage to share those things which are happening in their lives. Right? We will never know what is happening, right? What the problems are, what the root issues are. This does not mean that we cannot be strict with them. On certain occasions, the Prophet ﷺ would be strict. The blessed face of the Prophet ﷺ, the color would change. Sometimes he would just ignore and give a silent treatment. So the method that we can use is not hitting. The method should be just sitting down with the child and putting the child in the spotlight, right? Putting them in the spotlight, because our goal should be to change them from within, right? Change them from within. Once someone was narrating to mention this story, that there was this Islamic school and the child was rebellious, did not want to pray. And he said, my Islamic teacher is forcing me to pray. I don't even make wudu. So in any case, my salah is not valid, right? And that just shows the importance that they're not making wudu, the salah is invalid. We need to make this change from within, right? We find this in the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ as well. Once a Sahabi, he came to the Prophet ﷺ and said, I think about a certain sin and I want to commit it. Can you give me permission? And the Prophet ﷺ said that, how would you feel if the same sin was committed against one of your female relatives? Right? Using dialogue, right? Making the child look at that situation from a different view, from a different perspective. Sometimes our kids, they have a problem with lying. They lie. So to teach them this hadith that if you lie, the angels will run away because this bad smell is coming from your mouth. And you can sort of exaggerate a bit that, oh, such a bad smell is coming, people are running, angels are running. Right? So you can sort of use that to make the child see that from a different angle, from a different perspective. Right? Changing their perspective, but doing that with love. We can teach them through analogies. And this is, I think, we find in the story of Luqman al-Islam as well, that he's teaching his child the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but for that you need to come down at the level of the child. Right? You need to teach them through stories, through analogies, through examples, through metaphors. And again, this is a parenting principle that we find in the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. So for example, to show the importance of Salah, the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned the analogy that there is a man who dives 5 times in the river. And then he asked the Sahaba Ikram that whether or not will that person have any dirt left on his body. And the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala, they said that, any person who does this, there won't be any dirt, right? And the Prophet ﷺ then said that when a person prays 5 times every day, that is how their sins are washed away. One is to say that pray 5 times every day. That's bland instruction. And the other is, right, that you teach them through examples, through analogies, you create an active picture, right, a creative picture. And for that we need to find the right analogies, the right examples, so that we can relate to our children at their level. One very secret determinant in our relationship with our kids, which we should talk about a bit more, is the relationship the parents have with each other. Right? This is very important, and we have our experience about this as well, that whenever parents fight, right, the children also will fight with each other. They will pick that up. Our speech, the speech that we use, that's the speech that our kids will pick up. If we are rough and tough and crude in our speech, they pick that up very quickly. And that's how, their speech also becomes. As adults, we know the limits and dynamics of fighting, right? We know arguments, we know disputes, but the kids, they don't have that idea. They can become way too aggressive, right? So if parents have friction in their relationship, and if they're constantly arguing and bickering and complaining and fighting with each other, this will have a very strong and a negative impact on their children, right? This will also impact the love between siblings. Right? The love of siblings is directly sort of proportional or linked to the love between parents. If the parents are loving towards each other, that love would trickle down in our kids and between our kids as well. One person who raised his kids in a very beautiful and a very pious way, someone asked him that, what was the secret to your parenting? And he said that it was very simple. I kept their mom happy. Right? I kept their mom happy. So try to have a good relationship with your spouse. Whenever there are differences, sort of sort them out with love in your own room, right? So that the children are not able to hear it. And try to calm the other person down. Vice versa, right? Calm the other person down. Unfortunately, this is the root problem of several disagreements in our society, right? And another very important parenting principle that we learn from the Sunnah is that we should view our kids as a life's second chance for us. It's a second chance that Allah has given us, right? Perhaps we made mistakes when we were young, and we ended up with bad habits and bad company and ended up doing things which we now realize we shouldn't have been doing, right? But now that we know the pitfalls of this journey called life, we should now design the lives of our kids in such a way that we can guide them. We can prevent them from making the same mistakes. And for this, we need to plan their lives early so that they can achieve more in their life. Plan early. You know, there's some interesting research about this. In one very famous research, it says that studies show that 10,000 hours of focused effort plus guided mentorship, these two ingredients are key, are central for attaining success and excellence in any sphere of life. Two things: putting in 10,000 hours of focused effort and having guided mentors in that particular field. You put the two things together, a child can attain excellence in any field. Now for us, putting 10,000 hours, it's difficult because we don't have time. We already are at a particular stage in our life. We are thinking about our next career move, where to move, right? So if I want to become a hafiz of the Quran, I want to master multiple languages. For me, time is an issue, right? When time is short, then my choices become limited. I may not be able to attain now skills or attributes because time is limited for me. But for our kids, when you're planning for a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old or a 7-year-old, they have the whole life in front of them. For them, choices are unlimited, right? You can give them the best in the dunya, you can give them the best in deen as well. They can become hafiz, scholars, mufti, they can master multiple languages, they can excel in their deen, excel in their studies, excel at work, excel in their relationships. They can excel in all fields, right? Just need to start planning early. Right? We need to seize upon that opportunity, because if you waste that opportunity, waste that time, that window, then it might become difficult, right? And we should perhaps one of the most important principles is that if we want to raise virtuous and pious kids, for that we need to become virtuous and pious ourselves. I think this goes without saying. This is so important, right? We speak about imani tarbiyat, right? In the story of Hazrat Luqman alayhi salam, the first nasihat that he is giving to his child is that, Ya bunayya, don't do shirk with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. La tushrik billah. Don't associate partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for this shirk is zulmun azim. And this is teaching us, there are several aspects of upbringing, but the first aspect which is being highlighted here is the imani tarbiyat, right? Working on developing the iman of our kids. And this is perhaps the most difficult. Why? Because for us to instill iman in our kids, we need to have true iman. How can we ignite the flame of iman in our kids if we don't have that fire within? We need to be full of iman. We need to have that passion for Allah, that love for Allah. Only then we'll be able to instill that love in our kids as well. So iman, giving them an introduction about Allah. That is what iman is. The Sahaba, they say that the Prophet first taught us iman, then taught us Quran. Iman on Allah, giving an introduction to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have to find ways to do this. Sometimes, when a child hasn't met their distant relative, we say that, far away in that, you have an aunt who loves you so much, and you have this uncle who loves you so much, and they haven't seen their uncle or aunt, but you keep telling them that they love you, they gave you these gifts, and the child begins to develop a connection and a relationship with them. In a similar way, we need to have such conversations with our kids about Allah. That Allah gave you so much. Allah gave you this toy. Allah gave you this food. Allah gave you so many blessings. And inshallah, there'll be one day that you'll get to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? Teaching them about Allah. This is 101. Right? 101 lesson about who is Allah. And teach them at their level. Right? Don't teach them high level things about, punishment and hellfire and all of that. Teach them there is one day that is coming where if you do good, you will meet Allah and Allah will be happy with you. And if you're upset, then Allah will be upset with you. If you disobey, Allah will be upset with you. Right? Teach them at their level. About Jannat, right? About paradise. It's a place where Allah will give you everything. I have a 5-year-old daughter. Just recently Eid al-Azha passed, and we had some goats and we would sacrifice them. And my child, she developed a fondness for the goats, and we had several of them. So the day came when we had to sacrifice, and we said to her that, these goats will be going to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they'll be in Jannah. And then she said that I also want to go to Jannah. Right? I also want to go to Jannah so that I can be with the goats. Right? And I especially like the brown goat, so I want to be able to sit on the brown goat in Jannah. Right? So you sort of come down at their level and teach them. And now sort of she keeps asking us that, when will we go to Jannat? And is the goat still there in Jannat? Right? And she keeps asking these questions. Right? Teaching them about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There are 2 ayat of the Quran which our scholars, they say we should instill within our young ones. One ayat is, Allah says that Huwa ma'akum ayna ma kuntum. Allah is with you wherever you are. Allah is with you wherever you are. And the second is that Allah is watching you. Right? Allah is watching you. And we should, instill this. There's a story mentioned by Imam Ghazali rahmatullah alayh in one of his books about some very pious individual, and this person was narrating an event about his own childhood. Okay, we'll just end. And he said that when I was about 3 or 4 years old, my uncle came to me and said that whenever you go to sleep, just repeat this phrase that Allah is with me, Allah is looking at me. Allah is with me, Allah is looking at me. And I did this for 3 times. Then my uncle said repeat it 7 times. I did 7 times, then 11 times, and 21 times. And then I developed a feeling within my heart at that age that there is some being, Allah, who is with me and He is watching me. Right? So instilling this within our kids, and we need to reform, like I said, reform ourselves so that inshallah we can also reform our kids. And last thing, but not the least, is we should never underestimate the importance of dua. Right? We will make all of these efforts and techniques and strategies and tips, right? But at the end, in Hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said that the best sabab, the means to acquire anything in this world, is to make dua. But for the dua, we need to make dua persistently, consistently. Not enough to make dua 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, and say Allah does not listen to me. We need to be strong believers. Hazrat Zakaria ﷺ is making dua for a child, and he is making dua for so long that now he is old age. Hair has turned white and grey, but still he is making dua for a child that, oh Allah, you have never returned me empty-handed. Whenever I make dua to you, you always listen to my dua. Allah bless me with a child in this old age. Allah gave him that child in old age. And we learn a principle to make dua with istiqamat, consistently, persistently, and we don't have any other door to go to in any case, right? Right? It's not that we can go to door 1, door 2, door 3. We just have this one door, which is the door of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we have to get everything from this door of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if we can learn to ask and get from Allah, then we don't need to beg before other people. We don't need to knock on the other doors. If we can learn how to shed tears before Allah, we don't need to shed tears before other people. Making dua persistently, and also making dua with conviction, with certainty. And this is very important, because in a hadith Qudsi, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that Ana inda zanni abdi bi, that I am with my servant as they think about me. If we start thinking that I don't know, I'm so sinful, I commit this sin, that sin, and Allah will not accept my dua because I'm such a big sinner, then that is how the dua will become. right? It will be doubtful. But on the other hand, if we are sure that Allah says that you think about me, that is how I'm going to deal with you. That Allah, I'm so sure that you will accept my dua, you will grant me my dua. If we make dua with conviction, with certainty, Allah will give it to us. Allah will give it to us. So we should make dua because Allah promises in the Quran that ud'uni astajib lakum, make dua to me, I will accept your dua. Allah is making a promise to us in the Quran. We don't even doubt the promises of people in this world. When someone makes a promise to you, and if you doubt their promise, right, the other person feels, what did you do? You're doubting my promise? And here Allah is making a promise to us that make dua to me, I will accept. We should not doubt the promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Shaitan makes us doubt the promise. Shaitan wants to cause that separation between the servant and the Lord. So anytime this doubt comes that I don't know whether my dua will be accepted or not, we should remember that this thought, this whispering is coming from Shaitan. And we should immediately repel it. Repel it by saying that, oh Shaitan, you made a dua to Allah you made dua. When you were being thrown out, you refused to do sajda, and you made dua at that time, Allah accepted your dua. You made a dua, Shaitan, that oh Allah, give me respite until Yawm al-Qiyamah so that I can lead mankind astray. Allah accepted the dua of Shaitan. So you refused to do sajda, still Allah accepted your dua. I am doing sajda, why won't Allah accept my dua? You were being thrown out of the assembly of Allah and still Allah accepted your dua. I have entered into the assembly of Allah, in the masjid, in the house of Allah. Why won't Allah accept my dua? Make dua, but make dua with conviction, with certainty. And I'll just end. Imam Bukhari rahmatullah alayhi, when he was a young child, a young boy, he lost his eyesight. In the books it's mentioned about his biography, he lost his eyesight. His mother, she started making dua. And it was the power of the dua of his mother that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala restored the eyesight back. And all of us know the rank of Imam Bukhari rahmatullah. You cannot study hadith without his name, right? And this was the power of the dua of his mother. So we should never underestimate the power of dua. We make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enable all of us that we can implement these teachings of the Sunnah in our life. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us tawfiq that all of us, we can make ourselves in such a way that we become pleasing to Him. Wa akhiru da'wana anil hamdulillahi rabbil alamin.